If you're struggling with Chinese characters or are not sure how to learn them, you're in the right place. This video will show you effective ways to learn and help you set a goal that's right for you. Let's go! Hello, 大家好, I'm Grace. In this video, I will first talk about the characteristics of Chinese characters. Understanding these aspects is crucial for improving your ability to learn and master characters effectively. Then I will share 3 tips to help you learn Chinese characters in a more efficient and effective way. 我们开始吧。Chinese characters are the written form of the Chinese language. One character corresponds to one syllable. A syllable in Chinese is typically comprised of 3 elements: an initial, a final, which contains at least one vowel, and a tone. Remember that a character usually has its own meaning too. Although it might not be used as an individual word, understanding its general meaning is helpful when learning new words. For example, 智 has the meaning of intelligence. So when it's combined with another character to form a word, this new word usually has something to do with intelligence. For instance, 智慧, 智慧, or 智商, 智商, etc. So remember, to learn a Chinese character is to learn its shape, its sounds, and its meaning. Regarding their shapes, many people might think Chinese characters are each like unique drawings. But imagine memorizing thousands of drawings, recognizing them whenever they appear, and even being able to draw them from memory. We have to be super intelligent to do that. So luckily, it's not like that. Chinese characters still have their own structures and patterns, so it's easier for us to learn and remember them. Here are 4 key points for you to understand their structures and patterns. Number 1. Strokes are the basic unit of Chinese characters. Strokes are the lines you see in characters, and it might be intimidating to think that you have to memorize so many strokes in order to write Chinese characters. Don't worry, we will talk about it later and I will show you how to learn it in an easier way. Number 2. Every Chinese character fits in a square shape. This doesn't mean that all Chinese characters look like a square, but it means that no matter how many strokes we use to write a character, they can all fit in a square space. And that's what you need to pay attention to when you're writing Chinese characters. Don't make them too tall or too wide. Number 3. Over 90% of common characters are just the combinations of a small same elements. Simply put, there are 2 types of Chinese characters. One is integral characters, which means that the character is inseparable, like 人, 山, 大, etc. Only less than 10% of characters are in this category. The other type of Chinese characters is compound characters, including over 90% of all Chinese characters. Compound characters are formed by combining 2 or more components, unlike integral characters which cannot be divided into smaller, meaningful units. For instance, 他, 花, 餐. These compound characters consist of a limited amount of components. From the research paper I read, in the 3,500 most frequently used Chinese characters, which is roughly all the characters we use in daily life, there are only 135 components. Which means that instead of learning 3,500 Chinese characters from scratch, you're actually learning how to combine these 135 components and what their meanings and sounds are. It sounds less intimidating, right? If you're interested in knowing why there are so many compound characters and would like to understand them, check out this video. Number 4. Around 90% of Chinese characters are written in 4 structures. As we mentioned, more than 90% of common characters are compound characters. When we learn them, we're not learning how to write them from scratch. Instead, we're learning how to combine different components to represent different sounds and meanings. The ways to combine them are actually very well established. Although there are more than 10 ways to combine components, around 90% of the characters use only these 4 structures. So when you're learning and analyzing Chinese characters, these are the 4 structures to keep in mind. Alright, now let's move on and talk about 3 tips that can help you learn Chinese characters more efficiently and effectively. Tip number 1. Prioritize recognizing Chinese characters. Many of you might be wondering if you should practice writing Chinese characters when you're learning them. Of course, learning to write them is a good thing, but it's very time-consuming. So a better way to approach it is first learning to recognize Chinese characters, establishing the relationships between the characters with their sounds and meanings in your brain. After you can recognize some Chinese characters, you can start integrate writing practice into your learning. This can help you memorize the characters better and distinguish between similar-looking characters. I will talk about how to set goals for writing practice in the next tip. So in summary, first focus on being able to read Chinese characters, knowing their sounds and meanings, and then move on to practice writing them. However, you don't have to write all of the words you're learning. You can be strategic about it, which is tip number 2. Different levels, different goals. Writing Chinese characters will help you understand and remember the characters better. However, practicing all of the words you're learning might slow down your learning progress. Of course, if you really enjoy doing that, that's totally awesome. But if you're not, then you can practice writing them strategically. If you're a beginner, I recommend you start from writing the most simple and common characters from your learning material. Which are those simple ones you see over and over again, like 不, 也, 今天, etc. When you practice writing them, you should focus on their stroke order, because using regular stroke order to write characters will help you develop muscle memory of them. And to do that, I highly recommend using Scritter. It's a wonderful tool to learn Chinese characters. You can create your own list of words to study. It not only provides you with the correct stroke orders, it also helps you memorize the sounds and meanings of the characters. For those of you who want to try it, I've put a link in the description and the comments below. So after you have learned enough characters, you will start noticing some patterns and structures in them. At this stage, you can apply a method developed by the scholar Liu Yanmei called 回忆默写法. One of the things this method emphasizes is that before you start writing a new character, you can first analyze it. For example, you can see how many components this character has and try associating it with the previous characters you have learned, see if there's any familiar or unfamiliar parts. For example, when you learn 抄, you might notice that this part looks like the 走 you have learned, and this is a 口. The remaining component is a 刀. You may or may not have learned it before, but now you notice it. And then try remembering how they're arranged. You can also relate the new character to any similar characters you know. You can put them together and see how they're different. Like when you learn 一, if you have learned 几, you might notice they're similar. You can put 几 next to 一 and figure out how they are different, so you will be able to distinguish them in the future. By analyzing the characters before you write them, you will be able to remember them better. Tip number 3. Consistency. I know this is so obvious, but it's also the hardest. Since there are quite a lot of Chinese characters to learn, it's important to know what approach to use, but it's also very important to make plans for consistent learning. Your plan can actually be super simple. For example, commit to 30 minutes a day in maybe reading Chinese characters, practice writing 5 to 10 Chinese characters, etc., depending on your level. But remember, it's also very important to review the characters you have learned, so be sure to include that in your study plan as well. Alright, those are all the tips I have for you today. I hope these insights into Chinese characters and the study advice are useful to you. If you have any thoughts on learning Chinese characters, whether it's challenges you have faced or effective methods you have discovered, feel free to share them in the comments. Also, if you liked today's video and would like to support me in making more content, please visit my Ko-fi page. The link is in the description below. Thank you so much. Last but not least, if you want to learn some daily Mandarin expressions, check out my Instagram, Grace Mandarin. 那我们下次见喽，拜拜。